People used to say that on certain nights, lights moved between the trees. Small glimmers slipping behind branches, appearing and disappearing, as if guided by an invisible hand. These were said to be the fair folk, sometimes steering travellers home, sometimes leading them astray, depended on the mood of the night. Fairies and their kin were once part of daily life in Britain. They lived in moors, hollow hills, woodlands, and the edges of fields. Today they feel half-remembered, softened into children's tales.
I told you, ogres don't live happily.
So what happened? How did a whole world of spirits, neighbours and night wanderers fade from view? Fairies were never one single thing. They were a family of beings, shaped by region, belief and fear, and imagined differently across our isles. In Celtic tradition, they were the Sidhe, not tiny creatures, but powerful, elegant figures who used man-made barrows and natural mounds as gateways to the fairy realm. To meet them was to brush against something beyond human comprehension. Later, in medieval romance, fairies became beings of courts and feasting halls. Knights wrote of wandering into forests and finding great chambers, lit with lanterns, music in the air, banquets laid out, and by dawn had it all vanished. But belief also lived closer to home. Almost every region had household spirits, brownies, hobs, quiet helpers who swept the floors, mended tools, kept watch at night. Sometimes a bowl of milk on the hearth was enough to keep them content. Others were less gentle. They led travellers astray, spriggans who guarded treasure, knockers in mines, tapping warnings or tricks along the tunnels, all part of a landscape that felt alive with unseen company. These ideas formed slowly, overlapping and changing for more than 1,000 years. They were shaped by the land itself, hills, forests, coastlines, fields, a landscape alive with stories. There are old legends of places that appeared only when they wished to be seen. Out in the Bristol Channel, people once spoke of the green meadows of enchantment, islands that rose from the water without warning. You could look across the waves for hours and see nothing, and glimpse a stretch of green land as if it had always been there. They were said to only appear by accident, and never to those who searched for them. Fishermen glimpsed them while mending nets. Travellers noticed them during rare moments of calm water. Some claimed they were visible from the air, flashes of coastline where none had existed before. The fair folk were believed to live there. Stories tell of them crossing the water and wandering through Welsh market towns. Sailors once swore they landed on the meadows and joined fairy revels, music drifting through the dark, lanterns glowing, a joy that felt strange and otherworldly. But when they returned to their boat and looked back, the islands had vanished. There was only open water, the uneasy feeling maybe that they'd stepped onto a place that preferred to remain unseen. Across Britain, there are sunken lanes and hollow paths that twist beneath roots and steep banks. People once believed these places belonged to the fair folk as well. Travellers described familiar routes that suddenly felt wrong, a path that seemed to bend in a direction it had never bent before, a narrowing of the world that stole hours when the walk should have taken mere minutes. Some called it being pixie-led, a moment when the land shifted, or when another presence took an interest in your journey. And when the spell lifted, travellers often found themselves back where they had started, with no clear sense of how much time had passed. So why did this world fade? For centuries, fairies made sense because the world felt alive. People walked unlit paths, worked by firelight, lived beside forests and moors. Night was not empty, it had presence. Then the world changed. Towns grew. Factories arose. People left the land. Stories once told around the hearth gave way to new noise and light. Enclosure fenced the wilds. Fields once open to myth became private ground. And as electric light filled the dark, belief in the supernatural waned. Education, religion, science, each drew the curtain back a little further. Strange lights became marsh gas. Tapping in mines became geology or dripping water. The Victorians softened the fair folk rather than abandoning them. Beings that had once been formidable became miniature figures with wings. A world of enchantment reduced to something decorative. A transformation that felt, in its own way, like a quiet death. Yet belief never disappears completely. In places like Glastonbury, fairies reappear in shop windows, street art, carved doors in tall trunks, and small festivals. They have become symbols of imagination and nature, a language for places where the world still feels alive with magic. Fairies lived in the edges of things, hollows, thresholds, woodland paths, doorways, places where the world felt thin. Those edges still exist, in mist between branches, in quiet paths that twist more than they should, in the feeling that you're not entirely alone. Perhaps fairies are not gone. Perhaps they're waiting, in the old places, for us to pay attention again.